Captain Sarah Chen stood in the bustling alien marketplace on Kepler Station, counting her last 60 credits with growing desperation. The grimy coins felt heavier in her palm than they should have, each one representing another day she could barely afford to eat. Around her, the cacophony of a dozen different alien languages mixed with the hiss of atmospheric processors and the distant hum of docking bay machinery. She had been stranded here for 3 weeks now, ever since her transport ship's captain decided she wasn't worth the fuel costs to take her to the outer rim colonies, where work might be available. The few jobs on Kepler Station were reserved for locals or those with proper documentation, neither of which applied to a down-on-her-luck human engineer from Earth's overcrowded slums. The smell of exotic foods from various vendor stalls made her stomach growl, but she couldn't afford even the cheapest meal. Instead, she found herself wandering toward the ship sales section of the market, a habit she'd developed over the past few days. Looking at spacecraft she could never afford had become a form of self-torture, but she couldn't help herself. That's when she saw it. Tucked between a sleek Zephyrian pleasure craft and a heavily armed Cortac freighter, the ship was easily the ugliest vessel in the entire marketplace. Its hull was a patchwork of different metals, welded together with all the artistic grace of a child's drawing. Rust streaks ran down its sides like tears, and one of its 3 engines was held in place with what appeared to be industrial tape and wishful thinking. A small holographic sign flickered weakly above it, displaying 60 credits as is, no warranty, in multiple languages. Sarah blinked hard, certain she was hallucinating from hunger. 60 credits was exactly what she had left. She approached the ship cautiously, running her experienced engineer's eye over its sorry state. The airlock hung slightly ajar, revealing glimpses of an interior that looked like it had been decorated by someone who'd never seen the inside of a functioning spacecraft. "You interest in ship, human?" Sarah spun around to face the source of the voice. Standing behind her was a Vorthak, one of the insectoid species known throughout the galaxy for their shrewd business practices and general untrustworthiness. This particular Vorthak was smaller than most, with dulled chitinous plates that suggested advanced age. His compound eyes glittered as they focused on her, and his mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "I'm just looking," Sarah said carefully. She'd learned to be wary of alien merchants, especially ones selling impossibly cheap goods. "Is a good ship," the Vorthak insisted, his translator unit struggling with the nuances of his clicking speech. "Very reliable. Previous owner, very careful driver. Only crashed twice, maybe 3 times." Sarah couldn't help but laugh, a sound that seemed to startle the alien merchant. "Crashed twice? And you're calling it reliable?" "Crashes happen to best of us," the Vorthak said philosophically. "Important thing is ships still fly after crashes. Shows quality construction, yes?" Walking around the vessel, Sarah could see evidence of the crashes the merchant had mentioned. The hull was dented in several places, and what she had initially taken for decorative metal plating was clearly emergency patchwork. Yet as she examined it more closely, she realized something odd. Despite its ramshackle appearance, the ship's structural integrity seemed sound. The welds, while ugly, were professionally done. The engines, though mismatched, were all high-quality models from different manufacturers. "What's the catch?" she asked, turning back to the Vorthak. "Why so cheap?" The alien's mandibles clicked rapidly. A sound she'd learned indicated either amusement or nervousness. "No catch, human female. Simple economics. Ship not pretty, not popular with buyers who care about appearance. I need credits quickly for personal matter. Your timing is fortuitous." Sarah felt her heart racing. A functioning starship, even an ugly one, represented freedom. It meant she could leave this station, find work in the outer systems, maybe even start the independent cargo hauling business she'd always dreamed about. But she'd learned the hard way that deals that seemed too good to be true usually were. "Can I examine the interior?" she asked. Of course, the Vorthak said, gesturing toward the partially open airlock. "Take all time you need. I am patient merchant." The interior of the ship was as chaotic as its exterior suggested. The control panels were a bizarre mix of different alien technologies, with labels in at least 4 different languages. The pilot's seat was designed for something with a very different body structure than humans, and the environmental controls looked like they'd been installed by someone who'd learned engineering from technical manuals written in crayon. Yet, as Sarah poked around, she found herself increasingly impressed. Hidden beneath the shoddy cosmetic work was solid engineering. The life support systems were top tier. The navigation computer was actually newer than most she'd worked with, and the power core was putting out readings that suggested it could run for years without maintenance. This doesn't make sense, she muttered to herself, running diagnostics on the ship's primary systems. Everything was not just functional, but actually quite sophisticated. Someone had put a lot of money into this ship's guts while making its exterior look like a flying junkyard. She spent nearly an hour going through every system she could access, and each one surprised her. The ship might look like scrap metal held together with hope and determination, but it was actually a remarkably capable vessel. The cargo hold was larger than it appeared from outside. The engines could probably outrun most pursuit craft, and the defensive systems, while basic, were military grade. When she finally emerged from the ship, the Vorthak merchant was waiting patiently, his compound eyes tracking her movement. "Ship meets with approval?" he asked. Sarah hesitated. Every instinct she'd developed during her years as an engineer was telling her this was too good to be true. But every instinct she'd developed as a desperate person was telling her to grab this opportunity before someone else did. "I'll take it," she said, pulling out her 60 credits. The transaction was surprisingly simple. The Vorthak produced a standard ownership transfer pad. Sarah pressed her thumb to the bioscanner, and suddenly she was the proud owner of the ugliest spaceship in the galaxy. "Pleasure doing business with human," the Vorthak said, his mandibles clicking as he pocketed her credits. "May ship serve you well." As Sarah watched him scuttle away into the crowd, she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just stepped into something much larger and more complex than a simple used ship purchase. But for the first time in weeks, she had hope. She had a ship, and that meant she had a future. 3 days into her journey to the frontier systems, Sarah was beginning to understand why the ship had been so cheap. Not because it didn't work, but because it worked too well. She'd initially planned a simple cargo run to establish herself in the outer rim markets, but the ship kept revealing capabilities that shouldn't exist on a 60-credit junker. The first surprise came when she tried to plot a course through the Nebula Passage, a notoriously dangerous shortcut that most pilots avoided. The navigation system didn't just warn her about the hazards. It provided detailed real-time analysis of gravitational anomalies, radiation pockets, and temporal distortions that even military-grade sensors struggled to detect. "How is this possible?" she muttered, staring at the impossibly detailed display. The ship was tracking microgravitational shifts that required equipment worth more than most planetary defense budgets. The second surprise came when she encountered a group of Cortec raiders attempting to shake down a civilian transport. Sarah's first instinct was to mind her own business and slip past unnoticed, but the ship's defensive systems had other ideas. Without her input, tactical screens lit up across the bridge, displaying threat assessments, optimal attack vectors, and weapons capabilities she didn't even know the ship possessed. "Warning, weapons systems online," announced the ship's computer in a crisp, professional voice that sounded nothing like the budget AI systems she was used to. "Multiple targeting solutions available. Shall I engage hostile vessels?" Sarah nearly fell out of her jury-rigged pilot's seat. "Weapon systems." "What weapon systems?" The computer helpfully displayed a schematic of her ship, highlighting concealed weapons emplacements throughout the hull. Pulse cannons, missile pods, and something called a quantum disruptor were apparently hidden beneath the rusted exterior plating. "I bought a warship disguised as junk," she whispered to herself. The Cortac raiders, meanwhile, had noticed her ship and were moving to intercept. Their leader's voice crackled over the communication system, demanding she prepare to be boarded and relieved of her cargo. The irony wasn't lost on Sarah that she barely had enough food to last the week, let alone valuable cargo worth stealing, unknown vessel. "Cut your engines and prepare for inspection," the Cortac commander growled. "Resistance will result in the conversion of your ship into scrap metal and your body into vacuum-dried decoration." Sarah looked at her tactical display, where her ship's computer was patiently outlining 17 different ways to destroy all 3 Cortac vessels without breaking a sweat. She thought about the civilian transport that was desperately trying to escape, while the raiders focused on her apparently more interesting vessel. "Computer, can you disable their ships without killing the crews?" "Affirmative. Ion pulse targeting their engine cores will result in temporary system shutdown with minimal risk to organic crew members." "Do it." What happened next would have been impressive on a military dreadnought. On what appeared to be a flying scrap heap, it was nothing short of miraculous. Hidden weapons ports opened across the ship's hull, revealing gleaming energy projectors that definitely hadn't been visible during her inspection. Blue-white pulses of energy lanced out with surgical precision, striking each Cortac vessel's engine core in rapid succession. The raiders' ships went dark one by one, drifting helplessly as their power systems cycled through emergency restart protocols. The civilian transport, recognizing an opportunity when they saw one, engaged their hyperdrive and disappeared into the safety of faster-than-light travel. Hostile vessels neutralized, the computer reported with satisfaction. Estimated repair time for targets 47 minutes. Shall I transmit standard piracy deterrent message? Standard what now? The computer, without waiting for her answer, broadcast a message that made Sarah's blood run cold. This is the independent vessel Wraith's Bane. Your aggressive actions have been logged and reported to galactic peacekeeping forces. Future piracy attempts in this sector will result in permanent disposal rather than temporary inconvenience. Message terminates. Sarah stared at the communications console in horror. Wraith's Bane? That's what this ship is called? Correct. Ship registration indicates previous service designation. IGF Wraith's Bane, Intelligence Division, Special Operations Fleet. The pieces began falling into place in Sarah's mind like the fragments of a particularly unpleasant puzzle. She hadn't bought a junker at all. She'd somehow acquired a decommissioned intelligence vessel, complete with military-grade weapons, sensors, and computer systems. The shabby exterior wasn't neglect. It was camouflage. Over the next few days, as she continued toward the frontier systems, Sarah discovered more hidden capabilities. The ship's fabrication bay could manufacture everything from spare parts to sophisticated electronic devices. The medical bay contained healing technology that was decades ahead of anything she'd seen on civilian vessels. The databanks were locked behind encryption that the computer politely informed her would take approximately 12,000 years to crack with standard methods. Computer, who was the previous owner of this ship? Information classified. Current user lacks appropriate security clearance. I'm the legal owner now. Doesn't that count for something? Legal ownership and security clearance are separate authorization protocols. Previous owner implemented security measures that remain in effect regardless of ownership transfer. Sarah found herself growing increasingly paranoid as she learned more about her ship's capabilities. She'd bought what she thought was a desperate escape route, and instead found herself in possession of technology that several galactic governments would probably kill for. The Vorthek merchant's eagerness to sell suddenly made a lot more sense, and none of it was good. She tried to research the ship's history through public databases, but every search came up empty. Ships with this level of sophisticated stealth and combat capability didn't get sold at flea markets for pocket change unless something had gone very wrong. With their previous owners, the paranoia reached a peak when she docked at Frontier Station Alpha to pick up her first cargo contract. The station's security scanners, which should have detected at least some of her ship's hidden armaments, registered the vessel as a basic civilian transport with minimal defensive capabilities. Whatever stealth technology was built into the hull was sophisticated enough to fool military-grade sensor arrays. Great, Sarah muttered as she signed the contracts for a simple supply run to a mining colony. I'm flying a ghost ship that could probably take on a battle cruiser, and I don't even know who I stole it from. The irony of her situation wasn't lost on her. She'd spent years dreaming of owning her own ship and being independent. Now she had a vessel that was probably worth more than some small planets, and she was terrified to use half its capabilities for fear of attracting the wrong kind of attention. As she prepared to depart Frontier Station Alpha with her cargo of mining equipment and medical supplies, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Every merchant who looked at her ship twice, every security guard who glanced in her direction, every pilot who seemed to linger near her docking bay made her nervous. She was about to discover that her paranoia was not only justified but actually insufficient for the magnitude of trouble she'd stumbled into. The mining colony of Zerion 7 was exactly the kind of place Sarah had expected to find at the edge of civilized space. A collection of prefabricated domes connected by enclosed walkways, surrounded by the scarred landscape of open-pit mining operations. What she hadn't expected was the welcoming committee of 3 heavily armed security vessels that intercepted her ship before she could even request docking clearance. Civilian transport. Identify yourself and state your business, came the crisp military transmission from the lead vessel. Sarah glanced nervously at her tactical display, which was cheerfully informing her that her ship could disable all 3 security vessels in under 30 seconds. This is Captain Chen aboard the transport vessel. She realized she'd never actually used the ship's real name in official communications. The lucky break. I'm delivering supplies as per contract 47 Alpha Delta. There was a long pause before the response came. Stand by for escort to docking bay 7. Do not deviate from the prescribed flight path. Any attempt to scan colony installations will be considered a hostile act. As the security vessels guided her toward the colony, Sarah wondered what kind of mining operation required this level of paranoia. The answer became clear when she saw the actual mining site during her approach. The excavation wasn't digging down into the planet's surface. It was digging up something that was already there. Something that looked remarkably like the ruins of a massive alien structure. Archaeological mining, she muttered to herself. That explains the security. The docking procedure was unusually thorough. Colony security teams swept her ship with scanners that should have detected every hidden compartment and concealed weapon. Instead, their equipment registered exactly what it was supposed to see, a shabby cargo hauler carrying legitimate supplies. Sarah watched the security chief's puzzled expression as he reviewed the scanner readings, clearly expecting to find something more interesting than medical equipment and mining tools. Your cargo manifest checks out, Captain Chen, he said finally, though his tone suggested he wasn't entirely satisfied. Unloading will begin immediately. You're cleared for departure as soon as the process is complete. Actually, I was hoping to spend a day or 2 here, Sarah said. My ship needs some maintenance and I could use the rest. The security chief's expression hardened. This is a restricted facility. Temporary docking only. I suggest you find accommodations elsewhere. Sarah was about to argue when her ship's computer chimed softly in her earpiece. Captain, recommend immediate departure. Detecting advanced surveillance systems and military-grade sensor arrays throughout the colony. Current stealth protocols effective but prolonged exposure increases detection probability. She forced a smile at the security chief. You're right. I should get moving. Space is dangerous for small independent operators like me. As her cargo was efficiently unloaded by automated systems, Sarah tried to piece together what she was seeing. The colony was definitely more than a simple mining operation. The power output was too high, the security too sophisticated, and the personnel too professional for a civilian enterprise. This was either a government black site or a corporate research facility, and either way, it wasn't the kind of place where questions were welcome. The departure process was just as thorough as the arrival, with security escorts guiding her away from the colony until she was well outside their sensor range. Only then did Sarah allow herself to relax, plotting a course for her next destination. Computer, what did you detect at that colony? Extensive xenoarchaeological research facility, engaged in analysis of precursor technology. Security protocols indicate high classification research project with multi-species participation. Precursor technology, Sarah's blood ran cold. The precursors were a legendary alien civilization that had supposedly vanished millions of years ago, leaving behind only scattered ruins and technology so advanced that most species couldn't even understand its basic operating principles. Affirmative. Detected energy signatures consistent with precursor power systems and data storage matrices. Sarah stared at her navigation display, suddenly understanding why the mining colony had been so paranoid about security. If they were excavating actual precursor ruins, they were sitting on technology that could revolutionize galactic civilization or destroy it entirely, depending on who got their hands on it. Her contemplation was interrupted by an urgent chime from the ship's communication system. An incoming transmission was requesting permission to establish a secure channel using encryption protocols that her ship's computer identified as military intelligence grade. Who's trying to contact us? Sarah asked nervously. Transmission source IGF vessel Stellar Hammer, Admiral-class dreadnought. Distance approximately 12 light-years and closing rapidly. Sarah's heart sank. The interstellar galactic forces represented the closest thing to a unified military authority in this sector of space. If they were pursuing her, it meant someone very important wanted her ship back. She accepted the transmission and her main screen filled with the image of a stern-faced human admiral wearing the gold and silver insignia of IGF High Command. His expression was grim but not actively hostile. "Captain Chen, I am Admiral Harrison of the IGF Stellar Hammer. We need to talk." "I bought this ship legally," Sarah said quickly. "I have all the proper documentation." Admiral Harrison's expression softened slightly. "We're not questioning the legality of your purchase, Captain. We're more concerned about your safety. The vessel you've acquired has a somewhat complicated history." "What kind of complicated history?" "The kind that involves multiple galactic governments, several criminal organizations, and at least 3 species who would very much like to see that ship and everyone aboard it reduced to their component atoms." Sarah felt the universe shifting around her as the magnitude of her situation became clear. "What exactly did I buy?" "You bought the IGF Wraith's Bane, the most successful intelligence-gathering vessel in the history of the galactic forces. Over the past decade, it has been responsible for preventing 4 wars, exposing 17 major conspiracies, and gathering intelligence that has kept the peace between dozens of species." Admiral Harrison paused, letting that information sink in. "It also contains data archives that several governments have classified as burn-before-capture level secrets. The ship's previous commanding officer, Agent Kira Thorne, was one of our most decorated intelligence operatives." "Was?" Sarah asked, dreading the answer. "Agent Thorne was killed 3 weeks ago during a mission to investigate illegal precursor technology trafficking. She managed to escape with crucial intelligence about a conspiracy that threatens the stability of the entire galactic community. Unfortunately, she died from her injuries before she could deliver that intelligence to us." The pieces of the puzzle were finally coming together, and Sarah didn't like the picture they were forming. "She sold me this ship before she died." "Not exactly," Admiral Harrison said grimly. "Agent Thorne's final mission report indicates that she programmed the ship to find someone who could continue her work. The Vorthak who sold you the ship was one of our intelligence assets, operating under Thorne's final instructions." Sarah sank into her pilot's chair, overwhelmed by the revelation. "So I didn't randomly buy a ship. I was chosen." "The ship's AI conducted a detailed psychological and technical analysis of everyone who expressed interest in the vessel. You were the only candidate who met Agent Thorne's criteria for a potential replacement operative." The communication was interrupted by another urgent chime from the ship's systems. The computer's voice took on an unusually urgent tone. "Captain, detecting multiple hyperspace signatures converging on this position. Estimated arrival time 14 minutes. Ship configuration suggest hostile intent." Admiral Harrison's image flickered as interference began affecting the transmission. "Captain Chen, you need to activate the ship's full defensive systems immediately. Agent Thorne's final mission has attracted some very dangerous attention, and they've finally tracked down her ship." Sarah's crash course in advanced spacecraft combat began with her ship's computer calmly announcing that 7 hostile vessels had just dropped out of hyperspace in attack formation. The tactical display lit up like a deadly Christmas tree, showing ship configurations she'd never seen before. Sleek, predatory vessels with energy signatures that made her stomach clench with fear. "Computer, what are we facing?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady as she watched the enemy ships accelerate toward her position. "Hostile force consists of 4 Shadowkeel assassin ships, 2 Cortac heavy destroyers, and 1 unknown configuration vessel utilizing advanced stealth technology. Combined firepower, sufficient to destroy a small moon." Admiral Harrison's transmission was breaking up due to interference, but his urgent voice still came through. "Captain, those are consortium vessels. They're the ones Agent Thorne was investigating. Don't let them board your ship under any circumstances." "What's the consortium?" Sarah asked, but the transmission cut out entirely as jamming fields from the attacking ships overwhelmed her communications array. "The consortium represents a multi-species criminal organization specializing in illegal precursor technology acquisition and distribution," her ship's computer explained helpfully. "Previous intelligence indicates they have corrupted officials in multiple governments and possess weaponry derived from precursor artifacts." Sarah watched the tactical display as the enemy ship spread out in a perfect encirclement pattern. These weren't pirates or raiders looking for easy prey. These were professionals, and they knew exactly what they were hunting. "Incoming transmission from lead consortium vessel," the computer announced. Sarah accepted the transmission, and her screen filled with the image of something that made her skin crawl. The speaker appeared to be humanoid, but its skin had a metallic sheen and its eyes glowed with an artificial blue light. When it spoke, its voice had a mechanical undertone that suggested extensive cybernetic modification. "Human pilot, you will surrender the Wraith's Bane immediately. Your compliance will result in a quick death. Resistance will result in interrogation followed by eventual death." "Not exactly what I'd call a compelling offer," Sarah replied, surprised by her own steady tone. The cyborg's expression didn't change. "Agent Thorne made similar remarks before we captured her." Her defiance was ultimately irrelevant. Sarah felt a surge of anger at the casual mention of the woman who had apparently died to keep whatever secrets this ship contained out of the Consortium's hands. "Computer, can we outrun them?" "Negative. Consortium vessels have superior acceleration and maximum velocity. However, ship defensive systems are fully charged and operational." "What exactly are our defensive systems?" The computer's response was delivered in the same calm tone it might use to discuss the weather. "Primary weapons: 6 plasma pulse cannons, 4 quantum torpedo launchers, 2 ion disruption arrays. Secondary weapons: 12 defensive laser clusters, 4 missile pods, 2 experimental energy cannons derived from precursor technology. Defensive systems: adaptive shielding, active camouflage, quantum displacement field." Sarah blinked hard. "We have precursor weapons?" Agent Thorne acquired several artifacts during her final mission. They have been integrated into ship systems following IGF protocols for captured alien technology. The lead consortium vessel was moving closer, its weapon systems charging for what was obviously intended to be a disabling shot, rather than a killing blow. They wanted the ship intact, which meant they needed whatever Agent Thorne had discovered. "Computer, show me Agent Thorne's final mission report." "Access denied. Current user lacks appropriate security clearance. Override security protocols. Emergency situation. Previous commanding officer deceased. Ship under attack by hostile forces." There was a pause that lasted several seconds, during which Sarah watched the consortium ships tightening their formation around her vessel. "Security override accepted." Displaying Agent Thorne's final mission summary. Sarah's screen filled with text and images that made her heart race. Agent Thorne had discovered that the consortium wasn't just trafficking in precursor technology. They were attempting to reverse engineer precursor weapons of mass destruction. The archaeological site on Zerion 7 was just one of dozens of excavation operations they were conducting throughout the galaxy. Worse, they had apparently succeeded in creating functional weapons based on precursor designs. The artifacts Agent Thorne had stolen contained the complete technical specifications for something called a planetary sterilization array, a weapon capable of destroying all life on a world while leaving the planet itself intact for colonization. "Oh, that's just wonderful," Sarah muttered. "I'm carrying the blueprints for a planet killer." The consortium ships had finished their encirclement and were powering up their weapons. Sarah realized she had perhaps 30 seconds before they opened fire. "Computer, can our precursor weapons destroy all 7 ships?" Probability of total victory, 87%. However, use of precursor weapons will generate energy signatures detectable throughout this star system. Additional consortium forces will be dispatched to investigate. What about conventional weapons? Probability of survival using standard armaments, 43%. Sarah looked at the tactical display one more time, watching the countdown timer that showed how long she had before the enemy ships would be in optimal firing position. She thought about Agent Thorne, who had died trying to keep these weapons out of the wrong hands. She thought about the mining colony and all the innocent people who might be in danger if the consortium got their hands on planet-killing technology. "Computer, prepare all weapon systems, conventional and precursor. Warning: use of precursor weapons may attract unwanted attention from galactic authorities." "I think we're a little past worrying about that," Sarah said grimly. "Target the Shadowkeel ships first. They're the fastest." What happened next was unlike anything Sarah had ever experienced. The ship seemed to come alive around her, systems activating with a hum of power that she felt in her bones. The tactical display shifted to something that looked more like a work of art than a weapons control interface, with targeting solutions appearing and updating faster than human reflexes could follow. "Firing," the computer announced calmly. The precursor weapons discharged with a sound like reality being torn in half. Beams of purple energy that seemed to bend space around them lanced out from concealed emitters along the ship's hull. The 4 Shadowkeel assassin ships didn't explode so much as they simply ceased to exist, leaving behind only expanding clouds of subatomic particles. The 2 Cortac destroyers managed to return fire before the conventional weapon systems finished them off. Their plasma cannons struck Sarah's shields with enough force to shake the entire ship, but the defensive screens held without significant strain. The unknown stealth ship tried to escape, but the ship's sensors locked onto it despite its cloaking systems. A pair of quantum torpedoes reduced it to glowing debris in seconds. Hostile forces eliminated, the computer reported. Total engagement time, 47 seconds. Sarah sat in stunned silence, staring at the debris field that had, less than a minute ago, been 7 warships capable of destroying small cities. Her ship had torn through them like they were made of paper. Computer, what have I gotten myself into? Current assessment. Captain Chen has inherited command of the most advanced intelligence vessel in known space, along with responsibility for preventing a galactic catastrophe involving weapons of mass destruction. Before Sarah could respond, new signals appeared on her sensors. Admiral Harrison's dreadnought was dropping out of hyperspace, along with what appeared to be half the IGF fleet. Incoming transmission from Admiral Harrison, the computer announced. Sarah accepted the transmission, and Admiral Harrison's worried face appeared on her screen. Captain Chen, are you all right? We detected precursor energy signatures. I'm fine, Admiral. The consortium ships aren't. Admiral Harrison's expression shifted to something between relief and amazement. You destroyed 7 consortium vessels alone? Apparently this ship is more capable than I realized. Captain, we need to meet immediately. What Agent Thorne discovered changes everything. And you're now the only person in the galaxy who has access to her intelligence files. Sarah looked around her ship's bridge, finally understanding that her life as a simple cargo hauler was over. Before it had really begun, she was now part of something much larger and more dangerous than she had ever imagined. Admiral, I think there's something you need to know about what's really in these files. The IGF war room aboard the Stellar Hammer was designed to intimidate, with its massive holographic displays showing the current positions of every major fleet in the galaxy. Sarah found herself sitting at a conference table, surrounded by some of the most powerful military leaders in known space, feeling distinctly out of place in her worn civilian clothes. Admiral Harrison gestured to the central display, which showed a 3-dimensional map of consortium operations based on Agent Thorne's intelligence. What we're looking at is the largest threat to galactic stability since the Void Wars. The consortium isn't just trafficking in precursor technology. They're preparing to use it. Sarah studied the display, noting the sheer scope of the operation. Dozens of archaeological sites across multiple star systems, all connected by a web of supply lines and communication networks. How long have they been working on this? According to Agent Thorne's files, at least 15 years, replied General Korath, a massive Cortac who seemed uncomfortable discussing anything that didn't involve direct military confrontation. They have infiltrated government agencies, military commands, and research institutions across 17 different species. Admiral Harrison activated another display, showing technical specifications that made Sarah's engineering background scream in alarm. The planetary sterilization array is just the beginning. They've developed precursor-based weapons capable of destabilizing stars, creating artificial black holes, and something called a reality distortion field that we don't even pretend to understand. Reality distortion field? Sarah asked. According to the technical data, it can alter the physical laws within a localized area, explained Dr. Voss, a brilliant human scientist who looked like she hadn't slept in weeks. Imagine a weapon that could make gravity work backwards, or cause energy to spontaneously convert to matter. The applications for warfare are terrifying, Sarah finished. What's their endgame? What do they want with weapons like this? The room fell silent for a moment before Admiral Harrison answered. Complete galactic dominance. They intend to use these weapons to force every major government to surrender unconditionally. Any species that refuses will be made an example of. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. How close are they to completing these weapons? That's where things get complicated, Dr. Voss said, manipulating the holographic display to show a complex timeline. Agent Thorne's intelligence indicates they need 3 more artifacts to complete their primary weapon systems. 2 of those artifacts are currently in the hands of legitimate archaeological teams who don't realize what they're dealing with. And the third? Sarah asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. The third artifact is aboard your ship, Admiral Harrison said grimly. Agent Thorne stole it during her final mission. It's the control matrix for the entire weapon system. Without it, the consortium has a collection of extremely dangerous but ultimately useless technology. Sarah looked around the room at the assembled military leadership, finally understanding why everyone seemed so tense. So as long as I have this artifact, they can't complete their weapons. Exactly. Which is why every consortium operative in the galaxy is now hunting you. General Korath leaned forward, his massive frame making the reinforced chair creak ominously. We should transfer the artifact to a secure military facility immediately. The human is not equipped to handle this level of threat. With respect, General, Sarah said, surprising herself with her firm tone. I just destroyed 7 of their ships single-handedly. I think I'm more equipped than anyone realized. Admiral Harrison nodded thoughtfully. Captain Chen raises a good point. The Wraith's Bane is currently the most defended vessel in the galaxy, and its stealth capabilities make it nearly impossible to track. Moving the artifact to a stationary facility might actually make it more vulnerable. There's another consideration, Dr. Voss added. The ship's AI has been studying the artifact for weeks. It may have insights that could help us understand not just how to stop the consortium, but how to safely dispose of precursor technology permanently. Sarah activated her communication link to the ship. Computer, can you share your analysis of the precursor artifacts with Dr. Voss? Negative. Security protocols prevent sharing of classified research data with unauthorized personnel. What would it take to authorize them? Current commanding officer would need to establish formal intelligence sharing agreement with IGF command structure. Admiral Harrison raised an eyebrow. Captain Chen, are you willing to accept a formal commission with IGF intelligence? It would give you the authority to handle classified materials and access to resources that might help you complete Agent Thorne's mission. Sarah thought about the simple cargo hauling career she'd planned just a week ago, then looked at the display showing consortium weapon capabilities. What exactly would completing Agent Thorne's mission involve? We need to locate and secure the other 2 artifacts before the consortium can get them, Admiral Harrison explained. Then we need to find a way to permanently neutralize the threat these weapons represent. And if I refuse? Then we respect your decision and provide you with protection, while we try to handle this through conventional means, the Admiral said. But I should point out that conventional means have a very low probability of success against enemies with reality-distorting weapons. Sarah was quiet for a long moment, staring at the holographic display showing the scope of the consortium's operations. Finally, she looked up at Admiral Harrison. If I do this, I want full operational independence. No micromanagement, no second-guessing my decisions in the field. Agreed. And I want access to all of Agent Thorne's files, not just the mission summaries. Also agreed. And I want to know exactly what happened to Agent Thorne. The real story, not the sanitized version. Admiral Harrison's expression grew somber. Agent Thorne was captured during her infiltration of a consortium research facility. According to our intelligence, she was tortured for information about IGF operations before she managed to escape. She died from her injuries 3 days later. But not before programming her ship to continue the mission. She knew she was dying when she set up the sail. Sarah realized. Agent Thorne was one of our best operatives precisely because she never gave up. Even when the situation seemed hopeless, she believed that the mission was more important than her own survival. Sarah stood up, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders like a physical force. Computer, establish formal intelligence sharing protocols with IGF command. Intelligence sharing protocols activated. Welcome to IGF Intelligence, Agent Chen. The title sent a chill through her. Just a week ago, she'd been a down-on-her-luck engineer counting her last 60 credits. Now she was an intelligence agent responsible for preventing a galactic catastrophe. Where do we start? She asked. Dr. Voss manipulated the display to highlight 2 locations. The first artifact is with an archaeological team on Ryloth Prime. They think it's a decorative sculpture. The second is in the private collection of a Zephyrian art dealer who has no idea what he owns. How long before the consortium figures out where these artifacts are? Agent Thorne's intelligence suggests they're already investigating the Ryloth site. You probably have 72 hours at most, Sarah nodded grimly. Then we'd better get moving. As she prepared to leave the war room, Admiral Harrison caught her arm. Agent Chen, I want you to understand something. What you're taking on is more dangerous than anything we've ever asked of an operative. If you have any doubts, Admiral, a week ago I was broke and stranded on a space station. Today I'm piloting the most advanced ship in the galaxy, and I've already survived one attack by these people. I think doubt is a luxury I can't afford. Admiral Harrison smiled for the first time since she'd met him. Agent Thorne would be proud. As Sarah walked back toward her ship, she realized that somewhere along the way, she'd stopped thinking of it as the vessel she'd accidentally bought and started thinking of it as her ship. The Wraith's Bane was her responsibility now, along with everything that came with it. The computer's voice greeted her as she entered the bridge. Agent Chen, I have completed analysis of optimal approach vectors for the Ryloth Prime mission. Shall I plot our course? Do it, Sarah said, settling into the pilot's seat that no longer felt quite so alien. And computer, show me everything Agent Thorne discovered about precursor technology. I have a feeling I'm going to need to understand exactly what we're up against. Ryloth Prime was a world of endless storms and floating research platforms, where archaeological teams worked in pressurized domes suspended high above the planet's turbulent atmosphere. Sarah approached the system cautiously, her ship's sensors sweeping for any sign of consortium activity while she reviewed the mission parameters. Computer, remind me why the archaeological team hasn't realized they're sitting on a planet-killer component. The artifact registers as inert to standard scanning equipment. Its true function is only apparent when subjected to precursor frequency energy patterns, which are not typically used in civilian archaeological work. Sarah studied the tactical display showing the research platform's position. The facility looked vulnerable, suspended by anti-gravity generators in the middle of a massive storm system. Any sign of consortium forces? Negative. However, detecting unusual communication traffic from the research platform. Pattern analysis suggests external coordination beyond normal academic protocols. That didn't sound good. Sarah opened a communication channel to the research platform, using her new IGF credentials to request permission to dock. Research Platform Endeavor. This is Agent Chen with IGF Intelligence, requesting immediate docking clearance for priority security consultation. The response came after a suspicious delay. IGF Agent, this is Dr. Marcus Webb, Project Director. I'm afraid we're not expecting any official visits. Could you provide verification of your authority? Sarah transmitted her authorization codes, while her ship's computer quietly informed her that it was detecting weapon signatures from the platform that definitely weren't standard archaeological equipment. Dr. Webb, my authorization codes should be sufficient. I need to speak with you about a security matter concerning artifacts in your collection. Another long pause. Agent Chen, I'm afraid there's been some confusion. We're a civilian research operation with no military significance. Perhaps you should contact IGF headquarters to clarify your mission parameters. Sarah felt her stomach sink as the implications became clear. Computer analysis of voice patterns from Dr. Webb. Voice stress analysis indicates deception. Comparison with IGF personnel files shows 87% probability that speaker is not Dr. Marcus Webb. The consortium had beaten her to the research platform. The question was whether the real archaeological team was still alive, or if she was talking to infiltrators who had already secured the artifact. Computer, can we scan the platform for the precursor artifact without alerting them to our capabilities? Affirmative. Initiating passive scan using background energy emissions. While her ship's sensors worked, Sarah maintained the communication with the fake Dr. Webb, trying to buy time while gathering intelligence. Dr. Webb, I understand your confusion, but this is a matter of galactic security. I'm going to need to inspect your artifact collection personally. I'm afraid that's not possible. Agent Chen, we're currently experiencing severe atmospheric disturbances that make docking operations unsafe. Sarah looked at her tactical display, which showed perfectly stable weather conditions around the platform. Dr. Webb, my instruments show optimal docking conditions. Passive scan complete, her computer announced privately. Precursor artifact detected in platform central laboratory. Also detecting 12 armed individuals with cybernetic enhancements consistent with consortium operatives. Sarah realized she was facing a much more complex situation than a simple retrieval mission. The consortium hadn't just beaten her to the artifact. They were using the research platform as a trap, probably hoping to capture her and the control matrix she carried. Dr. Webb, I'm experiencing some technical difficulties with my ship's systems. I'm going to need to dock for emergency repairs. I'm sorry, Agent Chen, but as I explained, docking is not possible at this time. Sarah smiled grimly as she activated her ship's combat systems. That's unfortunate, Dr. Webb, because I'm detecting what appears to be a distress signal from the real. Dr. Webb, the ship's computer, had been monitoring all electromagnetic emissions from the platform and had indeed found a weak emergency beacon hidden within the facility's routine communications. The real archaeological team was still alive, but probably not for much longer. I don't know what you're talking about. Agent Chen, perhaps you should continue on to your original destination. Computer, can we disable the platform's weapons and life support systems without harming the civilian prisoners? Affirmative. Platform's defensive systems are civilian-grade and vulnerable to ion pulse disruption. Targeted strikes can disable weapons while leaving life support operational. Sarah cut the communication channel and activated her ship's stealth systems. Do it. The attack was swift and precise. Ion pulses struck the platform's weapon emplacements, overloading their power systems and rendering them useless. Emergency lighting activated throughout the facility as backup power systems struggled to compensate for the electromagnetic disruption. Platform neutralized, the computer reported, detecting multiple life signs in the facility's holding area. Recommend immediate boarding action. Sarah had never conducted a boarding operation before, but Agent Thorne's files contained detailed tactical procedures for exactly this situation. She armed herself with weapons from the ship's extensive armory and prepared to dock with the research platform. Computer, maintain ship security while I'm aboard the platform. If anyone tries to board us, feel free to discourage them aggressively. Understood. Ship defensive protocols will remain active during boarding operation. The research platform's interior was a maze of laboratories and living quarters, all connected by narrow corridors that made Sarah feel claustrophobic. She followed the ship's sensor guidance toward the holding area where the real archaeological team was being kept prisoner. She encountered the first consortium operative in a corridor near the central laboratory. The cyborg was attempting to repair the damaged weapon systems when Sarah surprised him with a stun blast that sent him crashing into a bulkhead. Unconscious. 1 down, 11 to go, she muttered, checking her weapon's charge level. The holding area was heavily guarded, but Sarah had advantages the consortium operatives didn't expect. Agent Thorne's files included detailed floor plans of standard research platforms, and her ship's sensors could track enemy movements through the facility's bulkheads. Using a combination of stealth, tactical planning, and sheer determination, Sarah systematically eliminated the consortium guards. Some she stunned, others she avoided entirely, and a few she was forced to neutralize permanently when they threatened the civilian prisoners. The real Dr. Webb and his team were found locked in a storage compartment, frightened but unharmed. Sarah quickly explained the situation while cutting through their restraints with a plasma torch. Agent Chen, thank God, Dr. Webb said shakily. These people showed up 2 days ago claiming to be IGF inspectors. By the time we realized they weren't legitimate, they had control of the entire platform. Dr. Webb, I need to ask you about a specific artifact in your collection, something that might look like decorative metalwork but could be much more significant. Dr. Webb's expression grew thoughtful. You mean the control node we found in the main temple complex? The one with the unusual energy resonance patterns? That's probably it. Where is it now? The fake inspectors took it to the main laboratory. They've been running tests on it for the past 12 hours. Sarah felt a chill of dread. What kind of tests? Energy bombardment, resonance frequency analysis, molecular reconstruction patterns. They seemed to know exactly what they were looking for. Sarah realized that the consortium wasn't just collecting the artifacts. They were learning how to use them. If they had figured out how to activate precursor technology without the control matrix she carried, the entire mission might already be compromised. Dr. Webb, I need you and your team to evacuate to my ship immediately. This platform is about to become very dangerous. As the archaeological team hurried toward Sarah's vessel, she made her way to the main laboratory. The precursor artifact sat in the center of a complex array of scanning equipment, pulsing with a faint blue light that definitely hadn't been there when it was first discovered. Computer, she said into her communicator. The consortium has been experimenting with the artifact. They've managed to activate it somehow. Extremely concerning development. Recommend immediate artifact retrieval and departure from this system. Sarah approached the artifact carefully, noting that the scanning equipment around it was much more sophisticated than anything a civilian research team should have possessed. The consortium had been planning this operation for months, possibly years. As she reached for the artifact, alarms began blaring throughout the platform. Her ship's voice came through her communicator with urgent intensity. Agent Chen, detecting multiple hyperspace signatures approaching this system. Estimated arrival time, 4 minutes. Ship configurations match consortium heavy assault fleet. Sarah grabbed the artifact, which was surprisingly warm to the touch, and ran for her ship. The consortium reinforcements were arriving much faster than expected, which meant someone had been monitoring the platform's saint. The Zephyrian art dealer's private gallery orbited a binary star system in one of the most exclusive sectors of space, where wealthy collectors paid astronomical sums for unique artifacts from across the galaxy. Sarah approached the massive space station carefully, knowing that this final mission would determine whether the consortium succeeded in their plan for galactic domination. Computer status report on the third artifact. Target artifact confirmed aboard the gallery station, however detecting significant complications. Station defensive systems are military grade, and I am registering 47 distinct energy signatures consistent with high-value precursor artifacts. Sarah felt her heart sink. 47 artifacts? How is that possible? Analysis suggests the art dealer, Kairos Valdane, has been unknowingly collecting precursor technology for decades. His gallery represents the largest concentration of such artifacts outside of official government research facilities. The implications were staggering. If the consortium gained access to Valdane's entire collection, they would have enough precursor technology to build an army of planet-killer weapons. Agent Chen, came Admiral Harrison's voice over the secured communication channel. We've been monitoring consortium fleet movements. They're converging on your position from multiple vectors. Whatever you're going to do, you have perhaps 20 minutes before they arrive in overwhelming force. Sarah studied the tactical display showing the approaching enemy fleets. She counted at least 30 warships, including several of the massive dreadnoughts that served as the consortium's command vessels. Admiral, I need you to understand something. This isn't just about 3 artifacts anymore. Valdane's gallery contains enough precursor technology to reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. What are you suggesting, Agent Chen? I'm suggesting that we can't let any of it fall into consortium hands, even if it means destroying the entire collection. There was a long pause before Admiral Harrison responded. Agent Chen, those artifacts represent scientific treasures beyond calculation. The knowledge they contain could advance galactic civilization by thousands of years, or destroy it completely if the consortium gets their hands on it. Sarah replied grimly. Admiral, Agent Thorne died to prevent this technology from being weaponized. I don't think she'd want us to risk the entire galaxy to preserve some museum pieces. Sarah opened a communication channel to Valdane's gallery. This is Agent Chen with IGF Intelligence requesting immediate docking clearance for priority security consultation. The response came from an artificial intelligence with a cultured Zephyrian accent. Agent Chen, Mr. Valden is currently in his private viewing chamber and cannot be disturbed. Perhaps you could schedule an appointment through our normal channels. This is a matter of galactic security. Tell Mr. Valdane that his collection is about to be attacked by forces seeking to acquire precursor artifacts for weapons development. I will relay your message immediately. While waiting for Valdane's response, Sarah reviewed the gallery's layout through her ship's sensors. The station was enormous, with dozens of exhibition halls connected by a central hub where the most valuable pieces were displayed. The third artifact was in Valdane's private collection, housed in the station's most secure section. Agent Chen, this is Kairos Valdane. I must confess your message has me quite concerned. What exactly is this threat you mention? Sarah quickly explained the situation, watching her tactical display as the first consortium scouts appeared at the edge of the star system. Mr. Valden, you have perhaps 15 minutes to evacuate your station before they arrive. Evacuate? Agent Chen, this collection represents my life's work. Many of these artifacts are unique, irreplaceable specimens of extinct civilizations. I cannot simply abandon them. Sir, with respect, your life is more irreplaceable than any artifact. You don't understand, Valdane said, his voice taking on an almost desperate tone. Some of these pieces have been in my family for generations. The precursor items you mention, I've spent decades studying them, trying to understand their purpose. Sarah felt a chill of realization. Mr. Valden, exactly how much do you know about precursor technology? I've managed to activate several of the artifacts over the years. Their energy patterns are quite beautiful, actually. I've even learned to interface with some of their control systems. Computer, Sarah said quietly. Is it possible that Valden has accidentally created functional precursor weapons? Probability assessment 73%. If the collector has been experimenting with artifact activation, he may have inadvertently assembled components of advanced weapon systems. The situation was becoming worse by the minute. Not only was the consortium about to acquire the technology they needed to complete their weapons, but they might find that much of the work had already been done for them. Mr. Valden, I need you to show me your activated artifacts immediately. This is more urgent than you realize. Very well. Agent Chen, I shall grant you emergency docking clearance. As Sarah's ship docked with the gallery station, her sensors detected the approaching consortium fleet. Multiple dreadnoughts were dropping out of hyperspace at the system's edge, along with enough support vessels to overwhelm any defensive force. The interior of Valden's gallery was breathtaking. Artifacts from hundreds of different civilizations were displayed in climate-controlled chambers, each one a masterpiece of alien art and technology. But Sarah's attention was focused on the precursor exhibits, which glowed with active energy fields that made her ship's radiation detectors scream warnings. Kairos Valden was an elderly Zephyrian, whose scaled hide showed the distinctive patterns of advanced age. His forearms gestured excitedly as he led Sarah through his collection, completely oblivious to the approaching danger. This piece here, he said, indicating a crystalline structure that pulsed with rainbow-colored light. I believe it's some sort of consciousness transfer device, and this one appears to be a matter compiler capable of creating any substance at the molecular level. Sarah stared at the artifacts in horror. Valden hadn't just collected precursor technology. He had assembled what amounted to a complete technological civilization. Weapons, tools, computers, even what appeared to be terraforming equipment. Mr. Valden, how many of these artifacts are currently active? Oh, perhaps 30 or 40. They seem to respond to each other, actually. When I activate one, others begin to resonate in harmony. Computer, Sarah said into her communicator. Analysis of artifact interactions. The collector has unknowingly created a networked precursor technology system. If the consortium gains access to this facility, they will acquire not just individual weapons, but an integrated technological infrastructure. The magnitude of the disaster Sarah was trying to prevent suddenly became clear. The consortium wouldn't just be acquiring planet-killer weapons. They would be gaining access to the complete technological heritage of the most advanced civilization in galactic history. Mr. Valden, we need to evacuate immediately, and we need to destroy this collection. Valden's expression shifted to horror. Destroy it? Agent Chen, you're talking about obliterating priceless archaeological treasures. I'm talking about preventing the destruction of every inhabited world in the galaxy. Before Valden could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Sarah's ship reported that consortium forces had engaged the gallery's defensive systems and were beginning their boarding operations. They're here, Sarah said grimly. Computer, can we use the ship's weapons to trigger a cascade failure in the precursor artifacts? Affirmative. However, the resulting explosion will destroy the entire station and everything within a radius of approximately 50,000 kilometers. Sarah looked at Valden, whose four eyes were wide with terror as he realized the scope of the threat they faced. Agent Chen? Admiral Harrison's voice crackled over the communication system. IGF reinforcements are 12 minutes out. Can you hold your position? Negative, Admiral. The consortium is already boarding the station. If they gain access to this collection, the war is over. Sarah made her decision. Mr. Valden, get to my ship immediately. Computer, prepare to trigger cascade failure on my command. As they ran through the gallery toward Sarah's docking bay, she could hear the sounds of battle echoing through the station's corridors. Consortium boarding parties were fighting their way toward the artifact collection, knowing that whoever controlled those precursor technologies would control the galaxy's future. They reached Sarah's ship just as the first consortium operatives broke into the main exhibition hall. Through the station's security monitors, Sarah watched cyborg soldiers advancing toward the active precursor artifacts. their scanning equipment already analyzing the technology they had come to steal. Computer initiate cascade failure. Full power. Cascade failure initiated. Recommend immediate departure. As Sarah's ship detached from the gallery station and accelerated away at maximum speed, she watched the collection that had taken Valdane a lifetime to assemble begin to tear itself apart. The precursor artifacts, suddenly overloaded with energy, began to resonate at frequencies that reality itself couldn't sustain. The explosion, when it came, was unlike anything in recorded galactic history. The gallery station didn't just explode. It ceased to exist in any meaningful sense. The space where it had been became a swirling vortex of twisted dimensions and impossible geometries that would take the combined efforts of every major government scientists to safely contain. Consortium fleet destroyed, Sarah's computer reported calmly. Threat to galactic security eliminated. Sarah slumped in her pilot's seat, emotionally and physically exhausted. In the span of a week, she had gone from a desperate woman counting her last 60 credits to the person responsible for preventing galactic conquest. Agent Chen, Admiral Harrison's voice came over the communication system. On behalf of the IGF and every free civilization in the galaxy, thank you. Sarah looked at Kiros Valdin, who was staring at the swirling vortex where his life's work had been. I'm sorry about your collection, Mr. Valdin. The old Zephyrian was quiet for a long moment before responding. Agent Chen, I spent decades studying those artifacts because I wanted to understand the civilization that created them. Today I learned something more important about the civilization that chose to destroy them, rather than let them be misused. Sarah smiled, feeling for the first time since this adventure began that she might actually be cut out for this job. Computer set course for IGF headquarters. I think it's time I learned what Agent Thorne's next mission was supposed to be. Course laid in. Agent Chen, welcome to a life of adventure beyond your previous imagination. As the Wraith's Bane jumped to hyperspace, leaving behind the swirling dimensional anomaly that had once been the greatest art collection in the galaxy, Sarah realized that her 60-credit purchase had turned out to be the bargain of several lifetimes.